Oh, wait, maybe now.
Can you guys hear us online?
Yeah. Scott, can you hear us? Time come on.
He did come off mute.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Cool, thanks, Mike.
Oh, it says yes. Okay, good, good. Okay, Nick, it's here. Ray,
I'm here.
Robin,
Here.
Rory here, and Scott online. Scott, you can hear us, right?
Yes,
I don't know if we can.
He's so quiet. I just barely heard him.
I can hear you. Thank you.
Great, now we can hear you. Okay, so we actually have everyone. Do we have any ex officio online?
No, not today.
No, okay. So we'll go on to the meeting minutes. Thanks for sending that around. I don't know if anyone has any discussion, any revisions or edits. If not, we're good on the meeting. We don't have to vote.
Yeah,
still.
correct.
Okay, so we'll go to public comment. Do we have anyone in the room for public comment?
Thanks for letting us be here. This is great. Learning experience. I don't have any other comment.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Anyone online?
Oh. Yes, we do have one person online who'd like to make a comment. James Teeter, you should have the ability to unmute your microphone now, and you have 2 minutes to share a public comment.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm commenting on behalf of Ben Bikes. Dear ECC members, thank you for your leadership on Ben's climate initiatives. I'm writing to urge a necessary revision to the Climate Action Partner Grant Program. As it stands, the grant excludes projects that promote walking and biking unless they fall under one of the 31 selected CAP actions that include community partners listed. This effectively disqualifies active transportation projects, even though they reduce VMTs, support mode shift, encourage bike and pedestrian travel, and often serve low-income youth in car-free communities. Ben Bikes submitted a proposal for a walking street on 12th Street that converts part of a 36-foot wide street into a pedestrian walkway. It connects students to an elementary school, Juniper Elementary School, uses low-cost reversible designs, and clearly aligns with the T2B prioritized TSP projects that and programs that develop safe alternative routes to schools. The project was deemed ineligible because T2 is not currently one of the 31 eligible actions. We believe this is a serious flaw. The grant currently prioritizes electric vehicle outreach, carpooling, over walking, biking, and safe routes to school, and we believe that's backwards. During the pre-application Q&A session, we were encouraged by City of Bend staff to apply, only to learn that our project wasn't considered eligible, and we believe there's a mismatch there that discourages real partnership. So we urge the ECC to recommend the T2 strategy to be eligible for the next round and to work with staff on the implementation metrics that prioritizes walking and biking over vehicular modes, and ensure future rounds support mode shift and active transportation. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, James.
James. Okay, any other comments online? I don't see any, so I think we can move on.
We should move right to the staff updates. There isn't committee conversation now, right? Well, I guess we can talk about that
We
later.
can talk, yeah, if you guys have questions about that comment, we can talk about that when we get to the
Later, but
to that agenda item. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so we'll move on to staff updates.
Okay, and actually, Counselor Norris, do you want to go ahead with the council update first before we do the staff updates?
Yes, thank you. And can you all see me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I'll just quickly go over. I won't necessarily have the dates. I was quickly scrambling trying to get this together. Sorry, my day became a little more packed than I expected. And I'm sorry I had to join remote today, but that was what the schedule dictated. So just wanted to briefly update you on the last month of meetings. We had our Human Rights and Equity Commission work plan approved. And so basically that will be taking a whole holistic lens of an equity lens to all of the decisions that we will be making at council, including all of our goals and work plans. We also have been looking a lot at the temporary safe stay areas, including with our recent meetings with the County Board of Commissioners. And so really looking at how we can provide safety for everyone out there, and also, commit to the timeline that we have had, which was through December of next year, but also recognizing that there have been some increased costs, also recognizing that there are a lot of safety issues, not only on site, but also just with folks trying to get from the location into town. And so we are going to be working with the county commissioners on that, and trying to develop a plan, but also committing to making sure that we have places for folks to go. So as we kind of condense the area, slim it down, making sure that people aren't just going to be moving to other parts of town. So I think that we have some joint consensus with that, at least with the county commissioners, and look forward to further dialogue and more solutions on how we can help folks out there. And then we had we had some updates from engineering on private development, just in terms of timelines, and different permit timelines. I think in all, things are tracking pretty good, but just, there's always rooms for improvement, especially with some of those more in-depth projects and engineering, the more complicated projects, I should say. We've been talking a lot about their midtown crossings, so Greenwood, Hawthorne, and Franklin. And just last night, in fact, gave council some direction on a lot of CIP projects, and working with CAB on a lot of those issues, but really trying to take, again, another holistic look at all of those crossings, and really trying to make sure that we're thinking about that, both in terms of bike, ped, and cars, and trying to find some primary connections for all of those. And you probably have heard some of the Hawthorne Bridge numbers came in a lot higher than anticipated. And so we are trying to look at more cost-efficient designs for that. And so more to come, but we're, trying to look at a trestle option that I think that we all agree we would like to keep as unique as possible, and but also representative of Bend and who we are. So, but keeping in mind that we have a certain cost that we are committed to. So, also more to come on that. We approved some great projects. We approved the Emblem project through our tax increment financing, and that will be in the Southeast area. And then we also approved some commercial with Taylor Brooks at Juniper Ridge. Those are the big highlights, I think. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Councilor Norris? Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, and I'll have to hop off a little bit early today because a meeting I have at noon, but I'll be listening then until then.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I can jump to the staff updates. So the first one is on the topic of our electrification policy work, or the electrification fee. We have, our next step for that is that we have a work session scheduled with the council on October 22nd. And at that work session, so we have brought our consultant on board. We've been doing a bunch of kind of just foundational kind of early stage analysis to help inform our electrification policy work. So we're going to be presenting some more of those data and findings that we have gathered to the council. And then we're using that to frame some questions for the council that will help get more direction from them about what really are their goals for this fee and the purpose of the fee, which will help us better set up that joint committee process. So I'm kind of still working through framing that presentation and how those policy questions will be articulated for them. But it would be a good one for any of you to, attend or watch if you're interested in just hearing directly from the council on kind of what direction they're giving us, because it, will really inform how we move forward. But at our November meeting, it sounds echoey to me. Does it sound echoey? Anyway.
Yeah.
It's not equity, you guys. Okay, we'll talk about a future agendas later, but I was also planning on holding some time in November to do more of a deeper dive update on the electrification policy work where I can plan on sharing some of those data and findings with you then, as well as sharing with you what the council shared. So if you aren't able to make it, you will have an opportunity for you to still get that information and to hear about it. So that's the electrification policy update. Another update is that I have been informed recently that for anyone that was on the advisory committee last year, we did for the first time an advisory body summit in January where we invited all committee members and all the counselors, and we held this big kind of just roundtable meeting where committee members had more time to interact with each other and committee members from other committees and also counselors, and we had some facilitated discussions to do that. And it was, we felt like it was really successful. We got really good feedback from that event. So we have decided to start hosting that every single year. So we have another one coming up in January. So I'll have more details for you all in the next month or two. Last time, there was an opportunity for each committee to have 2 minutes to kind of report out on. For last year, the purpose was for them to share input on council goals. This year, it will probably be something a little bit different because we're not doing council goals this year. But probably there will be an opportunity for the ECC among all the other committees to stand up and share either what the priorities are this year or what the big achievements have been for the last year. So that's just something to just kind of be aware of. And every committee member is invited. So we would love to just have as many people as possible attend that. So like I said, more info coming on that, but I just wanted to let you know that we'll be repeating that this year.
It was great. I know a handful of us were able to make it last year, but it's a good opportunity.
Yeah, and we're using that to kind of do a little bit of just iteration on how to better how committees can feel more connected with the counselors and what the city is doing and with each other. And so hopefully just by having even this event, we can continue just building more on just the relationships between the committees so that we can kind of make it as effective as possible. So, and then, oh, yes.
Quick note on that.
Yeah.
I attended last year. It was great. I really enjoyed it. Also, the food was really nice.
Yeah, we served dinner.
It was great.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make a quick plug that if it's possible to use reusables for that, it'd be a great opportunity to model that.
Okay.
I'm happy to help support that too.
Yes, I will talk with the team who's organizing that and see what we can do.
Yeah,
cool.
Thank you.
Okay.
Back on the electrification, the consultant is who?
It's a Brightline Group.
Yeah, Brightline.
And they're a firm based out of Denver, but our primary project manager is based in Portland. Yeah. Any other questions about those two topics? And then Megan's going to share a few updates about engagement.
Cool. Yeah, so just some quick updates because I feel like I haven't given an engagement update in a little while. But we attended, the City of Bend Environment and Climate team attended the Sunday Solar Fest, which was a couple weeks ago, put on by 350 to Shoots. That was a really fun opportunity just to engage with folks in the community and kind of coalesce around solar energy and renewable energy. For that, oh, I have someone calling me. So for that event, I made some handouts kind of specific to electrification, kind of detailing what the City of Bend is doing. And I brought some if you guys want to take some on the way out and just see what that looks like. And then we also kind of at that event, we updated I think we called it the What You Can Do pagers, which were made I don't know.
They were these, for anyone who doesn't know, back when we made the original CCAP, we did make these one-page handouts that was sort of like what you can do at home. And that was something that when we were working on our communication and engagement work a year or two ago was something that committee members at the time were saying oh, we should have more of those types of materials. And we had these old versions. So Megan took those and kind of
updated
them. Yeah. And we're now using those again.
Yeah, so they're also over there if you guys want to take a look. But it's kind of good. We're just building out our engagement kind of, I don't know, things that we can do with the community and handouts that we can disseminate. So that's kind of fun. And then we also attended the 350 to Shoots Clean Energy Conference. And so some folks were here as well. That was cool. And then we just got back yesterday evening from Breckenridge because we were at the 2025 Mountain Town Summit, which was really cool.
Yeah, it's like a climate summit of a bunch of mountain towns and just like mountain towns working together on kind of common sustainability challenges. And it was programmed really well. Like
Yeah.
Bill McKibben was the head keynote speaker, which was awesome. And so I think we're going to try to attend that each year.
Yeah.
And electeds are invited as well, which is cool and unique from a lot of other sustainability conferences that we have. They didn't come this year, but they might in the future.
Yeah, that was it.
Okay, thanks, Megan. Any questions about that? We've come really far in our communication
Yeah.
and engagement work, so I'd like to just give credit to Megan and anyone that was here 2 years ago when we were like talking about the needs from our comms work and we were doing almost nothing before. So I hope you
Yes.
can all appreciate that. Yeah.
I remember
really-
that. But if the water conservation department can show up at events, why can't we show up at events? Like,
Yeah.
we don't even have anything to bring to events. So like, it takes a lot to get that started.
It really does, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we have them over there so anyone can kind of take a look at that.
And then I have to make it really quickly.
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna mention, also second, thanks, Megan. And for the Mountain Town Summit, is there any notes or any like key highlights that you can share with the whole committee from there that some cities are doing really well? Or anything like
Yeah,
that?
we both, like Megan got home at like midnight, I think. I haven't, so I haven't not
That's fair.
done that analysis in my head in a presentable way yet, but I will think about how I can do that. I'm just thinking for our agenda next month, we were going to do that kind of federal and state policy scan, and maybe I can bring some of the key findings from that
That'd be great.
conference.
That'd be great.
Yeah,
Cool.
we also had to leave early to make it back for today, which was too bad. So it was a little bit shorter than we would have liked, but really good. The session I had to leave early from was like this deep dive on building decarbonization, and it was a lot of electrification in other mountain communities. Particularly, a lot of those mountain communities are much harsher winter environments than we have here. So it was really good to hear a lot of those stories and a lot of similar challenges. And same thing with the pressure on housing in those communities, also really large.
I guess a follow-up question on that, were any of the slide decks or presentations public, or is it pretty, are they sharing?
They
them
haven't, they're
afterwards?
not sending them to us.
Okay.
And a lot of them was more discussion oriented than just kind of big slide decks, but yeah. But I'll see if they send resources out, I can forward those along.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
yeah. Okay. One more actually comment about that is that this summit is also open to, there were like it was local governments, ski areas, and then also like non-electeds, but then like nonprofits, other community partners basically are also invited to that summit. It's one thing that I like about the summit compared to the USDN one that I attend, which is only city governments. It's just different. So something to think about for any of you that are involved in community organizations. It would be cool if we had some other partner organizations attend that in future years with us. Okay.
One more question on that note. Is there any potential for the city to provide funding towards that for committee members in the future?
I don't know if we would extend it to committee members themselves, just because that would be sort of precedent setting for like other committees, like, I don't know, it would have to be a comprehensive program that we do around enabling committee members to attend those conferences on behalf of the community. But it's something as far as like community partner organizations that could attend, it's something that we can look into in future years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the conference does provide like scholarships for
Okay.
folks. Like they do provide some free tickets if you
Yeah.
apply.
That's good
Yeah.
to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, are we on to the grant program?
Yes.
Okay, is that Megan?
Okay.
Yes, although
We have to have the,
yes, just to intro it. So we're very excited to get to this grant program. This is obviously just a program that we're all really excited about. And before we start the agenda item.
Just for the record, Michael Stelkirk, City Attorney's Office. I don't think any of you guys see this many people have been in person.
Oh.
So I'll sit up here for this. Council wanted to be, and we talked about this when we were making recommendations to council about the program. But council wanted to be very mindful of conflicts of interest here because of the way we set the program up. And so into the program document is a requirement that folks who either work for or have families that work for or affiliated with applicants, that they recuse themselves from the discussion. So those of you who are affiliated with an applicant, now is the time to do that. I don't know how many there are. I'm hoping we have a quorum after that so that we can have our meeting. If not, we can still have our meeting. There are solutions. But so for those of you, you could declare conflict on the record, and then recuse yourself. You can either take off, or we also, if you want to watch the meeting, we have it showing in a conference room, and I can take you over there. Since there's not going to be a quorum in the conference room, you are legally allowed to be together and talk about what's going on, but generally that's not advisable. So if you do decide to stick around and watch the meeting from in the conference room, if you could keep conversation about the grant program and the deliberations to a minimum, that would be great.
Can I say clarifying?
Yeah, of course.
Like, can I give you my circumstance and you can
Yeah,
tell me?
no,
Okay.
that's the point. So the way we set this up, just some more background.
Yeah.
There's what the law requires
Yeah.
and there's what the program requires.
Yes.
So you all have potential conflicts because you're making a recommendation to the city manager. And then the city manager will make the final recommendation.
Yeah.
Council just wanted that extra layer. And so they added the recusal requirement, which wouldn't be required under state law in this program, just for really the appearance of propriety.
Yeah.
So now's the time to declare your conflicts, even if you have a potential conflict.
Okay.
If you want to talk about it, now's the time to do
Okay,
it.
I have one. So my
Yes.
husband teaches at OSU, Oregon State University. He is not involved in this application whatsoever. He doesn't even know it was submitted. Do I have to recuse?
You should, yeah, because so
Does there any affiliate?
has a financial
Sounds
interest
good.
there.
Fair.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, that's fine.
And I teach at OSU Cascade, so I will be in December.
There you go.
I work at the environmental center, who submitted an application, so I'm also recusing myself.
Are we, did we start already? Or are we doing questions still?
I think they merge, which is also fine. It doesn't need to be overly formal. The important part is that at the end of this, everyone feels comfortable that they put on the record what they need to put on the record. And for those of you that are recusing yourself, you've recused yourself, and then I'll walk you over if you want to hang, or you can go have the rest of your day.
What's quorum for us, right?
You need 6.
Okay. Well, I also work at the environmental center, so I'll also recuse myself.
I see Scott came on camera.
Yeah, I work at Habitat for Humanity, so I will also recuse myself.
Okay. 1, 2,
Oh,
3,
left.
4. I think we're good, right?
That's 5,
Yeah. Any others?
but we're still fine.
So fine on
Yeah.
quorum. Okay.
Yeah.
Do any of you want to stick around and watch?
I will.
Great, I will walk you all over.
Well, yeah, we have snacks for them.
Oh, and we have snacks.
Thank you.
Definitely stick around.
I'll be that while we watch.
I didn't realize
And then
that.
the other thing is that, so if you guys are all watching, we're gonna break for lunch sort of in the middle.
That's
Stuff that you all, I don't agree with them.
Yeah.
You all can stop. Come back in the room and get your lunch. We have them.
Okay.
Very conservative. All right.
Okay, so Kathy, we're gonna get them over there.
That was especially helping us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We made it with the bear, man.
Yeah.
I know.
Nice to see you guys.
Oh, we're going really far. I thought we were there.
Thanks, Lord. Do you mind?
You could even
I-
get
I-
a nice
I
chair.
really just want to play something. There were a lot of people. Oh, this is fun. Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah, we probably wouldn't have as much to say.
You want some coffee?
Already.
I'm good.
Totally good.
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to make sure you feel well.
And maybe while we have you, also just to understand
Yeah.
our role then, as a committee.
Yeah.
Because there is already a staff recommendation.
Yep.
There will be a decision by city manager, and I
Yep.
assume ultimately city council. Do they even have a
Nope.
vote?
So city council has delegated to the city manager the authority to approve these awards. Your job is to make a recommendation to the city manager. So, and I'm not sure exactly how Cassie is planning to do this, but I'm gonna take an educated guess that at the end of this, after the deliberations, you all will put up on the screen awards and amounts, and then we'll have a vote, basically a motion to approve that and a vote. And if it's approved, that recommendation will go to Eric.
Okay. As opposed to, and I guess part of what I'm curious about is if we are mostly just expressing our opinions and then staff can take those into account versus we put our own recommendation forward, which might be different from a staff recommendation, or if the staff recommendation is a recommendation to this committee.
I would consider staff recommendation both a recommendation and a starting point. So council has asked the ECC to has said staff can do this, but they don't have to. So really it's the ECC who gets to make the decision or the recommendation, the decision about what to recommend. Staff, I think staff has a starting point for you all so that it saves time essentially, but you could reject staff's starting point altogether. Really, it's your job in this meeting to deliberate and decide what you want to recommend based on the applications. And then there are criteria that council asked you to look at. So it's not just not unbridled opinions, it's opinions, but it's opinions that are tethered to these criteria in the program document.
Okay, and that's where the public comment that we had regarding bike ped strategies was found to be inconsistent.
So
I can address that.
you want to?
Yeah, I can just address that one now.
Sure.
So that application was from Ben Bikes and their proposal was essentially that they wanted funds to go and hire an engineer to actually engineer and design a portion of city right of way. That they would then, the end deliverable would be sort of like a stamped permit ready engineering drawing for a 3,500 foot stretch. It was like a safe crossing to school. And we, in the list, so where it fits in the CCAP is we have a strategy about improving bike and pedestrian infrastructure. We did not, when we were delineating which climate action strategies are eligible for the grant program and which ones are not, we did not see, because doing bike and ped infrastructure is that's a city service and it's our right, it's our public right of way. We just didn't see that as sort of the best fit for this grant program to be going towards that type of work. This grant program is really meant to do more of the kind of programmatic outreach and education, the types of things that there are nonprofits and other organizations that are kind of delivering those services kind of better or different than the city can do, rather than trying to give that money to organizations who are trying to do services that are really core services of the city to kind of design and manage our own rights of way. So that was sort of the justification. I don't know if you have anything.
I was going to add, I mean, that was a very good explanation of the more interesting policy rationale. The legal rationale was that when council adopted the program, they only said eligible programs are the ones that were identified as having a community partner aspect to it. And then the program actually listed 30-something actions. And in the application, you need to tether your application to the action. And that was the eligibility determination to say this wasn't tethered because it wasn't something that council had identified as a community partner program. It's still important. It's not that this is not an important part of the CCAP. It just wasn't, as the definition or title of this grant program is, a community partner program.
And that's why the justification that I gave was sort of like around what went into the which ones were designated as community partner ones versus which ones are really intended to be city led. So, yeah.
Okay, that's helpful. Yeah. I'm, as you can probably tell, just as chair, I'm trying to get to what is the most specific and narrow role that we can define, because we could spend hours and hours, and certainly there are going to be a lot of reasons people might have to choose one proposal versus another. And I was asking, formally, our role, it sounds, is to make the recommendation to the city manager. as
Yes.
opposed to a recommendation to staff or to approve or disapprove the staff recommendation, and trying to help those of us who are still in here
Yeah.
put our comments and perspective as narrowly as we can. So it sounds like a very key part of it is making sure it's measuring them with respect to those criteria by the council.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yes, and we created the staff recommendation really just to give some structure to the discussion so that it wasn't kind of like just starting all over the place. And because there's so many applications, we also didn't feel like it was necessary to have every single committee member, or really realistic to have every single committee member read and score every single application. It took a lot of time for us to do that. So the staff recommendation really is just meant to kind of orient the discussion if it's helpful. And then the questions that we are going to have you respond to, which Megan will kind of explain the process in just a minute, are also kind of oriented around that staff discussion. But I do not want to imply that the staff recommendation is like, yeah, or that it's really meant to be helpful if it's helpful. If you want to recommend based on something, just a different process you want in your head, that's totally fine. And we'll continue, this is the first time, so we spent a lot of time trying to think about like what's the best process to get from all of these applications and select someone. And it was really tough to come up with like what's the right process. So this is an approach we're taking this time, but we can, iterate it if in the future it's like that didn't work that well. So do you want to explain kind of how we're planning on running the discussion today?
Yeah. So I think the idea is we're going to have everybody go around one by one and kind of make their case for, do you agree with the recommendations that staff have presented? And if not, propose your alternative, and maybe just kind of speak to why you are making those decisions. And then, so we'll go like 5 minutes per person max, and then everybody will have a chance to kind of say their piece. Then we'll break for lunch.
Well, you're going to do a presentation first.
Yeah. I'll just go through like the process, and then I'll go through like
Okay.
our recommendations, and then we'll do the like individual.
And
deliberation.
your reasoning behind your recommendations to some extent.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be pretty high level just because it's like, I think 6 or 7 that we're suggesting funding. So I'm not going to go through like every single one individually, but I will say like why kind of generally we decided to choose these ones. So then after everybody does their individual kind of recommendation, then we'll break for lunch, have the people from the other room come back in, do lunch, and then we'll have the remainder of the period to deliberate as a group. So then you guys can just kind of have a free form discussion about taking into account everybody's opinions and suggestions. And then hopefully at the end of that, we can make a motion to recommend which organizations to fund and at what amount.
Okay, because I'm just realizing if we really went 5 minutes, that would be 30 minutes in here, and you probably need at least 10 minutes. So something might need to be truncated a little if we.
Yeah, I
feel
think
like
anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
However much time people want to take.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, does that make sense? Okay. Oh wait, can you go back later? Slides? Okay. Yeah, so just some high level takeaways. We had 17 total eligible applications from 13 unique organizations, which is awesome. I think in the beginning we were expecting to have only like 5 to maybe 10 applications. So this definitely exceeded our expectations, and we're pretty excited about
Very
that.
excited about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so good and bad is that we there was over $830,000 of funding requested, which again is so great, but also we only have $150,000. So it made the for us at least making the recommendation really tricky because there's such great ideas and we really wanted to fund every single one of them, but can't. So it was a highly competitive application process, but we feel confident in the ones that we're recommending to you guys. And there were a lot of lessons learned for next year, which we can kind of talk about if we have any time or in the next meeting. But yeah, we're excited generally about how it's been going. Yeah.
Just background, where did the funding come from originally?
It's basically just general fund,
Okay.
a new general fund allocation that they allocated this year, and it's the first time we've ever gotten general fund allocation from the council. So it was the kind of backstory was that when we adopted the updated CCAP this year. That discussion happened in April, and it was kind of woven into the recommendation. It was like, let's adopt the CCAP and let's also create this grant program with this budget request. And then that aligned up well with the budget cycle. So then they approved that in the budget in June. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, we can move on to the next slide. So I guess just like a quick reminder of the process that we took. So there was an internal review team of 3 people, and we had, we're calling it a detailed scoring matrix, which is in the memo. It's on the last page. And that's what we used to score the projects. And again, it's meant to be a starting point for discussion. The scores that we ultimately gave these projects aren't final. As you guys know, this is a recommendation. But it was a helpful starting place for us to understand project impact, organizational capacity, feasibility, equity and accessibility, those things like that. So it's pretty small, but this is a list of all the applications we received, their amount requested, the funding extent to which we suggested, and then the total points on the very end that we assigned those groups. And it's also, I know it's small there, but it's on the, it's in the memo too, on like the 3rd or 4th page. So we can come back to this when we like kind of deliberate and stuff, but I'll move into our staff recommendation because it's a little easier to read. So this is what we recommended. So 5, 6, there's a total of 6 organizations that we're recommending to fund. 2 of them, the full funding amount, and then the 4 remainder in partial amounts. So the first one that we're recommending is for Bend Redmond Habitat for Humanity. The project title is Climate Resilience, Clean Air and Cooling Upgrades for Income Qualified Homeowners. They requested $50,000 and we are recommending to. Should I go for
I think anything other, like if there's anything nuanced to why you chose them. 'Cause I was thinking we might want to have some clarifying questions before we go into our positions, you know, sort of about the process. So anything you think helps us understand, because I think hopefully everyone did look at the recommendations and read the proposals as suggested.
Yeah, so I think like kind of taking a high level view of why we picked these, they aligned well with the Community Climate Action Plan goals and strategies, either one or more. We felt that these projects would help advance council's goals for this biennium. And they were a mix of kind of climate mitigation and resilience strategies and projects. So we like that. They seem to be the most feasible and cost effective and kind of like best use of funds for the project and the limited funds that we have. And then we also like that they addressed a mix of the CCAP focus areas. So we're not just focusing on energy or transportation. It hits every single focus area. And then we also like that these ones specifically had strong equity considerations. And either the impact was community-wide or on vulnerable populations that we're hoping to target. So those were kind of high level.
Yeah, I mean, it really did come down to this scoring matrix. The ones that we're recommending are the highest scoring ones, with the exception. Yes, and that exception was the environmental center. So the environmental center put in 3 applications, which was a factor. The one that we didn't recommend, and they're very close to, you know, so it was like they had 84 points. The one that we're recommending partial funding for was 82 points. So the environmental center, that particular application had one of our other recommended applications was very similar program to it. The COCC application was kind of similar, like workforce development training. And then so that was part of it. It was like if they have multiple applications that were all good, that was one that we felt like was met with another one. We thought that the other proposal was a stronger workforce development one based on the scoring. And then in addition to that, sort of like Megan was saying, the school pool, which was one that was just below it, we also liked that was a different CCAP sector. Like it kind of allowed us to have a little bit broader breadth of the types of programs we were funding, because a lot of them were energy focused. So anyway, so it you know, the scoring criteria, the project impact was the largest bucket by far. So I would say that the general sense is that these are the ones that felt like they had the strongest impact. Sometimes for slightly different ways, like some of the discussion that we had is sort of the difficulty with impact where for GHG reduction, when there are some projects that like will directly reduce GHGs. Other ones are like a little bit more indirect, like something like workforce development. So we had some discussions about that. It's like, okay, if something is workforce development, that in and of itself is not reducing GHGs. It's like creating this you know, kind of creating the systems and the structure we need to eventually get to that. So that was like something that we had to kind of wrestle with a little bit, but we felt like because to reduce, you know, to really get to that kind of like GHG reduction future that we want, you need some of those like building steps. So we, to us, even if it was indirect, it still had a, you know, still counted for a high impact. But so those were the types of things that we were discussing, but it's hard to just, it's not like there's like one rule that applied to every single one of them. It was a little bit more subjective than that. If that makes sense.
No, that's helpful, because I think also sort of all implicit, you know, how you decided which ones to go for full versus partial, and maybe even sort of the overall amount, what sort of number of applicants to fund, because you know there's sort of a functional benefit from the dollars, but also potentially a signal and almost sort of a prize or award element, and where those the questions regarding what it would mean if you receive partial funding, how much those descriptions factored into that. Just sort of curious, partly on where you think the margins of your recommendations are that we might most productively focus, if there are any.
I mean, I think we're just genuinely curious from each of you, like when you read the applications, do these ones feel like the most impactful for you? Or was there like something of value in the other ones that we were maybe undervaluing? I think that's sort of like in the bigger picture. I think that would be valuable. The two that we recommended full were just, we just felt like they were just really well done applications, really impactful proposals, and that was reflected in the scores. Like it was one of those things when you just read the application, they were really clear, they felt really feasible, and the impact felt meaningful. But even before we talked about that it was like it was reflected in the scores, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And then another thing that went a little bit into the full versus partial, well, at least for some of the partial funding, we did sort of look at each of them to see like, could this still work with partial funding? And I think every single eligible applicant said they were willing to accept partial funding.
Except for one, but yeah.
Yes, because that was one of the questions in the application. So we did kind of a cursory look at like, okay, like if we're scaling this down, you know, we didn't ask them, they didn't tell us specifically because they don't know how much partial funding they'd be getting, like what parts they would cut, but in the application they gave some hints on how they would manage partial funding. So that was also factored in a little bit. So.
Does anyone else have other questions about the staff process?
I think one question I have, so like in my head, I categorized these a little bit, right? And like there was like free job programs, there was 4 house energy upgrades of different types. Can you like tell us why some got funding in those groups and some didn't as you do your explanation? Like they're all great projects, right? So I'm just curious if you could help us like determine why like how you differentiated those.
Yes, since I don't know exactly how you grouped all of them, it might be helpful if you could like ask me specifically, like, oh, between these two, what was the difference?
Yeah, I mean, so like, well, if we start with the first one, right, that happens for anyone that you've already presented. There's that one, then there's the revolving fund with the environmental center, that one got funded too, and then there were the 2 Central Electric Co-op ones that didn't get funding, but were kind of almost line for line similar to those. So I was just curious if you differentiated the 2 that got funding there versus those 2 that.
Yeah, I can, do you have
You can go and then I'll like.
I think from my perspective, and I'm just sort of speaking off the cuff here because we didn't like prepare that analysis in a way where we all talked about it. Comparing like the habitat one for the Central Electric Co-op one, it felt like a more like an efficient use of dollars, like the information about how many homes they could reach. Like it was more like cost effective with the habitat one. Theirs is I know the CEC one was also for their low income qualified, but with the Bend Habitat being like a partnership with an affordable housing developer for people who are in those affordable housing developments, felt like a good fit. Those are projects that the city like really actively supports, and it's a big priority for the city. And then the environmental center one works a little bit differently because it's this revolving, it's not quite the same where they're just going in and making the upgrades themselves, although they do have a program that helps facilitate that a little bit. So just that it was kind of addressing this different gap. It was specifically this financing gap felt like a unique solution that was just mechanically different than some of those other ones. And then what was the fourth one that was sort of similar to that?
There were two CEC ones.
And I think too, what we had.
Oh, well, one was
cost retrofit.
Yeah.
One was solar, one was cost retrofit, yeah.
What we had spoken about too was the CEC ones were only eligible for CEC customers, and in the application, like program overview, we said that programs or projects that address the whole community are going to receive preference. And so that was definitely one thing for me. I just wanted to see it like address the entire community or be available to the entire community.
I was gonna add more or less what Megan just said, because I similarly was a little stuck with some of the ones that were similar, Nick. And that's a thought that crossed my mind in thinking about the CEC ones is, the other couple, the revolving loan and the habitat one. Any City of Bend resident would be eligible in theory. But CEC, while they have a substantial share of City of Bend residents as customers, it's not the full city. So that's one of many factors I thought about.
Yeah. And then just one more thing to add, I know they asked for 150K, and given if we did in theory like fund the full project, I think it said it would impact like less than 10 homes. And so I think like the scale of that versus fully funding the habitat one for 50K, like the reach is going to be bigger and more community wide versus like a limited number for a select group of CEC customers.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Can you do a similar breakdown with the next one you're going to talk about versus the other two jobs ones? That was the only other one that I categorized where I was like, they sound very similar. So ultimately it's probably a capacity question. But I'd
Yeah,
love to hear.
we felt like the application of those three felt the clearest and most feasible just from the way that they laid out their steps, the partners they had acquired. And also I think of the three, it might have been the lowest ask. It definitely felt like the most cost effective. It felt like really good value. So I don't have my notes on I'm not looking at them right now, but I remember because we did talk about those three, like, wow, these are three really similar ones, which I was actually really pleased about because we have done very little, any sort of workforce development within the city, and something I feel strongly that we need partners for. And it read the most well developed and thought out, I guess. Like the 350 Deschutes one, they had kind of identified like, oh, we need all of these speakers, but without a clear indication that they could they get all those speakers, or all those people going to be lined up. The COCC one also, the funding, that smaller amount of funding was actually going to deliver a workshop. The environmental center one is in an earlier stage of planning, and we do want to allow planning proposals. So that was another thing that was kind of tricky to me to figure out how to score planning proposals without dinging because we're allowing planning proposals, but they're just earlier stage.
Yeah.
But it does make it hard if someone's doing a planning proposal versus someone's doing a really similar project, but they're ready to go and execute that one. So it was like, for this amount of money with the COCC project, we're going to have this workshop delivered. That was less true for the environmental center one, since they're planning. And then the 350 Deschutes one, I thought the explanation of how it would come together felt less clear to me. And then also COCC has a lot more experience with workforce development, professional development. They have a whole, departments kind of supporting that. So that factored into kind of that organizational capacity in their previous experience.
Thanks.
Were there other ones that you felt like were really similar?
A little bit less so, but the waste ones, kind of those, there were a few that had kind of a similar mindset around waste and food
Yeah.
waste, I guess, but I thought those were a little bit more discreet.
Yeah, they were like different focuses, sort of. But I do think a lot of this discussion, I think, would be a good discussion for you all to have with each other. Because again, it's not that we did frame it around like, do you agree with these recommendations? Which I'm regretting a little bit that we asked it that way, because I don't want you to feel like you need to convince me that these recommendations are not right. It's really for you guys to have as a starting spot. So if I think the discussion we can have after we hear from each person is if one of you feels like, oh, I felt like the 350 Deschutes application was actually stronger than the COCC application. Like, does anyone else feel that way? I think that's where we can kind of flesh it out, because I'm less, I think it's less important what I think for each of you, and what's more important is for you guys to discuss with each other, you know, what you think of that. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. That makes sense. Because I think the most important thing here is understanding what underlies the recommendations,
Yeah.
especially where it's part of a structure that we are supposed to follow because it's based on council direction.
Yeah.
So that's helpful. Maybe we should start going around?
Yeah.
And Laura, are you comfortable if we start with you and work around?
I was just.
Or did you not want
to?
to?
No,
If someone else would like, I'll
I'm
think
happy to
myself
go.
later and then.
I'm happy to go. And yeah, so I read the applications first and then I looked at the staff scoring, and I think you all did a nice job of getting that sort of balance across the sectors. And I would say that I generally agreed with sort of within the buckets which applications were the strongest. A couple of notes. One, on the sort of the revolving loan environmental center proposal, I was curious why you were looking at that one for partial funding. In my mind, you know, that one's hitting multiple sectors. The revolving loan aspect, there's sort of like potentially broader reach and long-term impact. Although I think the funding from the city is covering staff time as opposed to the actual revolving fund. So I would be interested in a conversation about, you know, what would there be a way to sort of top that one up? I also noticed in that application, there was a comment on sort of how the project might be adjusted and wanting an opportunity to sort of resubmit if that were the case. I don't know if you've had that conversation or not. But I just had noticed that in the application, and that it was partial funding and one of the sort of higher scoring, higher impact proposals. Overall, I was struck by the high number of waste and materials applications. And a lot of them were really creative and interesting. And I still agree with you all wanting to kind of keep the focus on some of the higher impact from an emissions perspective projects. Just, it's not that they aren't great ideas, but the sort of like alignment for this particular program and having that balance across the sectors. I support the way that you approach that. One thing I did notice is just, as I was reading the applications, I appreciated when projects were bringing sort of a lot of match and other resources to the table. I think there's a little bit of a tension there where smaller organizations may not have as much to bring to the table, and so they need larger amounts. And so I think we picked the staff proposal puts together forward the strongest proposals. I think going forward is maybe just something to think about long-term in the program design of both with like much smaller organizations and planning projects, like how do we want to weight those? And given it's sort of another dimension of the equity picture, is just like, are we funding already better resourced organizations because they have stronger proposals? So I don't know that I'd make any changes based on that, but I just wanted to note that as we look at the projects and move forward. And I guess to that end, like one question that I did have was, you know, in the scoring, sort of the impact is obviously the biggest points category, but I was just curious if there were cases where like the feasibility or some of the other factors was like more of a driver and a lower score than the impact, and unpacking that a little bit. But yeah, overall, I think that the main thing I'd want to look maybe more closely at is there a way to more fully fund the electrification access loan program, and where might that come out of? And I'm maybe a little biased towards energy and transportation and emissions reduction projects over the waste and materials, and we've got 2 waste projects in there. So I might look to those, but they're already at partial funding, so those are my thoughts.
And I'm starting a list of like, if you guys have like specific proposals, I'm starting a list of those so that we can pull those up at the end. So we make sure we kind of like talk through, we kind of hit on each person's.
Oh, one other note I had, on the Habitat for Humanity one, I can try to read more closely, but I couldn't remember if they're planning on covering either through the city funding or other funding, like if there's a panel upgrade needed to install a heat pump and that sort of thing. Like, is that part of the program? Or are they only going to focus on homes that can sort of already accept the equipment? And I just remembered I did want to just note, I was intrigued by the Central Electric cooperative proposals, and just recognizing that a lot of our consumer-owned utilities, like their energy efficiency programs, like aren't as robust as Energy Trust. And so I can see why you all picked the ones that you did over those, but it's just sort of like again a thing to, you know, in the future, or like seeing some kind of a partnership between the co-op and a local organization, like could be really interesting in terms of future rounds of work.
Excellent. Do we have time to keep going? I don't know if specifics in terms of with the others and lunch and the like.
They're watching, so they're just gonna come in and have lunch when we get through, but yeah, we can, we have an hour left in the meeting, you know, we have another agenda item, but it's short, it can be as short as we need it to be.
And we even could potentially keep, well, no, we can't talk during lunch if we have them in here. Could they just come get the food and leave so that we can keep talking?
Yeah, they usually just come get the food and then leave, yeah, like we can try to do the quick lunch, but it never really works.
Yeah. Well, maybe, yeah, thanks, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, mostly it is the question I already asked, so I don't think I need to talk too long. I mean, I thought one was just like, they all looked good, and the ones that overlapped, my hope was that those organizations would figure out how to get together and collaborate, because like, you know, I don't think there's a lot of that stuff would benefit, I think, from multiple groups contributing to those outcomes together, as opposed to independently doing things that have a lot of overlap. So I think that's just, it's cool that all this information is surfaced, because it probably gets people to be able to talk to each other a little bit more. Yeah, I think the maybe specifically, I did kind of like the multifamily recycling program. I just thought that's a gap, and I thought the 2 other waste ones, they were a little bit event focused, or a little bit more like, I just wondered if they lacked the same scale that a true, like, strong multifamily recycling program might have, especially as more and more multifamily units are getting built, right? I think there's more multifamily getting built right now than single family in the city. So that one, I thought.
The Deschutes County one.
Yeah, the Deschutes County one. And then, yeah, I think just on the energy piece, like solar, in my mind, solar is just really going to struggle for a while here with the federal incentives going away. I think that tax credit was far more important to that industry than maybe some of the HVAC stuff. But I know everything's getting hurt a little bit here. And I thought the income qualified solar program, because of that, it had a unique value on solar. So I thought that was worth at least considering against one of the other two energy ones and just thinking through, are we sure? Are we sure we want those two versus like a dedicated solar one?
Yeah.
But my point taken, CEC has a limited customer base here. It doesn't apply to everyone. It would exclude a lot of people from some of that money. So that's all.
Thanks, Nick. Ken?
I really liked staff's selections. I thought you did a good job sort of weighing impact and what they could leverage in, and impact. I appreciate kind of the straw man to look at. It's stronger than straw because it's scored and stuff. So I like that structure. I thought COCC's workforce development plan was definitely the strongest of those types of applications, just in terms of what they were going to be able to leverage for that amount of dollar ask. It's just a great value. I loved the revolving loan idea, and maybe that should be talked about for more funding. But I thought the environmental center did a great job on both their or the two of the proposals that were going to get awarded. The invoking of the Isla de Basura at Podski, very powerful. We've all been there, I think, and seen that. I had a few reservations more in the sense of the application being stronger for the school pool. Just from a parent's perspective, I thought they could have added something about safety of the driver. How are the drivers vetted? Are the vehicles safe? Is there any kind of insurance impact if you're participating? I think we needed a transportation thing, but it just felt like that could have been addressed. I don't know if they were required to talk about that.
Yeah, there was nothing in our application that would have forced them to talk about that, but they could have, included that as part of just the.
Yeah. I was just like, well,
parameter.
am I putting my kid in this car?
No, that's a good point. We talked about the three of us that scored don't have elementary school age kids.
Yeah.
So we had some questions around
Right.
oh, is the PTO organization how some of the mechanics were harder for us to think through. So that's
Right.
helpful.
And then last note was just on the induction cooking one. I just feel like that is such a huge, heavy lift in terms of behavior change to get people away from gas. But the application after that, there was no discount or we're going to get stoves out to these people that can't afford something like that. So that's where it kind of fell short to me.
Thank you, Ken.
Thanks, Ken.
All right, I have a clarifying question to start because Laura brought up a good point of what was the weight of the scoring around the funding amount requested? Just because some organizations are obviously smaller and would need more funding. So I'm just curious on what your thoughts were when scoring about what they were requesting.
So where we talked about the scoring matrix a lot more before the new members started, sort of in the spring, but the cost effectiveness of it, I sort of we talked about that as part of project impact. We saw it as sort of a cost effectiveness. So the way that we were looking at it for the amount is just how impactful do we think this proposal is, even in just sort of big picture terms, and then how much are they asking for it? And if it was a small dollar amount and it felt really impactful, then in our minds, that's very cost effective. If it's a large dollar amount and it has a lower impact or addresses less people, then it was less cost effective. So that's as specific as we got on that. We did not I would not say there was some sort of analysis done interpreting how much does this organization need this money, because we don't necessarily have a ton of information to inform that for all of them. Some of them we might know, some of them we just don't know. So that's something that's just missing, I think, a little bit from the ability to score that part. Does that answer the question?
Yeah,
sort of?
yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Yeah, overall, I agree with the funding allocations.
I think we had a good diversity and mix of reach within all of them. I especially really liked the electrification ones, as I think they align well with the potential gaps in the here and homes funding. The zero interest loan, I think, could be a really good add-in to those gaps. I did want to add on to Nick's statement about the Deschutes County solid waste proposal. That was one that I think I would have scored higher, because one of our main focuses is we're trying to build a lot of multifamily housing in Bend, and the lack of education and access to recycling is very real in a lot of multifamily housing. And if we're trying to build more, we need more of that education and that access. And so it had a good combination of being a study, having action, and proposed policies that could have a really great impact in Bend moving forward. So that was one that I just wanted to highlight. Yeah.
And I'll comment on that one because we also had a lot of discussions on this one, and this is not something that I have talked with the county about itself yet. We thought it was a strong proposal in a lot of ways, and what that one partially came down to was like a little bit more of the philosophical use of the funds and wanting to kind of put it towards community organizations that are running programs that are directly serving community members with the dollars. But the thought about the multifamily, and this is the part I have not talked to the county or anyone else about this, but I was partially like, we need all this information. The Recycling Modernization Act is going to require us to to do a lot of this work. Like, we sort of have to do it outside of, we have to do something in that space outside of this grant program. So I was sort of thinking in my mind, like, this is maybe something that the city and the county should just sit down and figure out how to make this happen outside of this grant program. That said, I have not talked to the county about that. We don't have budgeted like other money to put towards that right now. So that was sort of my takeaway from that. So I think, but it's definitely still an eligible application. This would get done much faster if we awarded it now compared to like, oh, let's let the city and the county figure that out over the next year and then build it into a future budget cycle and the sort of long-term process that takes. So that was sort of like a little bit of the background thinking of that one. And I forget where that was reflected in the scores, but I think it was sort of like in the project impact. I took it down a little bit because I was sort of comparing it to like, it felt to me more like studies and analysis that government agencies should be doing to develop their programs versus a program that is being developed to, that program will, in the time period of this grant will create like a benefit for a community member.
Okay.
But it's something that it made me think a lot about like how to think about this program to accommodate those sorts of it comes up a lot with other like government agency requests compared to nonprofits because they're such different types of organizations that it can be kind of tricky to figure out how to navigate that.
Okay.
But anyway,
that context helps.
But I don't want to discourage you guys from like, because it's not the case that like we'll do this anyway in the next year. We probably would not unless it gets funded now. But we would maybe address it over a longer, different time period in a slightly different way.
Okay. Yeah, I think it was a hard decision when reading all of them. A lot of them were really amazing and creative, and impactful ideas. But yeah, overall, I agree with the funding that you all decided on.
It's 12:15. I wonder if I'm okay to speak while people are eating. Maybe we should do that. I don't know if Rory, you're okay doing that too.
Yeah, sure. I
Just
could also see just you and I finishing really quick.
Just go quick.
Just go pretty quick.
Just go quick. Oh, okay. Well, I'll try to go quick.
Say everything you want to say.
Yeah, okay. Well, I tried to think about this in terms of principles that I think are important to build into this as opposed to just thinking about the individual proposals. I care about obviously the goals from council and I care about the emissions issues, but I also care about local benefit. And especially given the local general fund taxpayer funding source, having that benefit be available to all Bend residents, but not diluted too much by potentially being distributed out beyond. So that touches some of them, like the county issues and one of the environment centers. Maybe it was even the revolving loan fund one where it would be potentially supporting the program that is also serving beyond the city limits. I don't know if there's any way to help to concentrate that there. I like in terms of the local benefits also where there is leverage, where there is almost sort of a multiplier effect, synergies, however you want to say it in terms of cost sharing, but even on a behavioral standpoint where there's an education component and there's that private funding contribution. I do a lot of work in incentives, and when you can see the most, say, bang for your buck or marginal return per dollar spent, that's always exciting to me. And that also makes me think about the overall structure in terms of the prize element. And I know this is new, but if this has any status or recognition associated with it, even thinking about being able to give a little bit of a signal in some token way to some of the others we think that are strong. I know that might be weird in the partial funding dilution point. Something else, though, that relates to that is thinking about these as community partners and trying to build up long-term sort of human institutional capital, that relationship and a positive relationship between the city and its partners, and recognizing where there are community partners that have shown a commitment on this, and the individuals. It was hard not to look at the individuals and think about who has made personal commitments, and you really think this is something they care about and that it will move forward and have that long-term effect. So those are some of the key principles I had in terms of on the margin. Well, maybe I should step back and echo others that generally I really like the recommendations, and I think the strongest proposals are the ones that are reflected with the most funding. I think on the margin, what I'll want to potentially talk a little bit about as a group is if it makes sense. Some of these proposals that we think were really good to give a little bit of a signal in some way. Obviously, it's a zero-sum trade-off here, so we have to think about where we take funding from and where that would make sense. I personally like the waste and materials because of the local benefit, private signal, private potential for behavior change. And it's just something that I think could have a lot of long-term impact in terms of little ways that you can signal to people. There's a lot of economic behavioral literature on how little signals can change behavior in bigger ways. I do like the 350 to shoots proposal in terms of its target, but also in this context of an organization that has made a lot of commitment in the community. The Environment Center certainly has as well, and funding 2 of their 3 proposals, I think, is reflected in the strength of the proposals, but I'd almost be curious if they would be, if they had that pot of funding, how they would want to distribute it, if they would feel like their third proposal, especially because it did have good scoring, but we jumped over it, there'd be any internal reason that it's helpful to give them some fungibility on those funds. The last thing I'll just say on the school commute, the public comment was actually compelling to me because I do think about the efficiency of bike and ped relative to electric vehicles, and thinking about all the energy it takes to, as someone who takes my kids to school on an e-bike as much as I can, the efficiency from overall energy of that versus the car, it does feel like a little bit of a miss that maybe in the future could be addressed. And on the commute option piece, as a parent of 3 children that are in or have gone through elementary and now middle school, I know that there is, and I'm not an expert on this in all circumstances, but there is a bus option unless you choose to go to a magnet school or something of that sort, where you're sort of opting into a choice, recognizing that need. And there tends to be a lot of parent coordination already with those schools. My kids go to Highland, and as with Rory, it has a particularly active PTO and organizational structure. So I don't know if those are actually the only parents that would really benefit from this. And I'll say that those tend to be some of the more well-off parents. And and engage parents already in the community. And that honestly kind of reflects some of my thoughts on the Deschutes County piece. When we think about equity and recognizing how the county has chosen to step back from some of its equity, DEI roles and sustainability roles from federal administrative pressure, how this fits into their overall budget sequence. So those are some of my high level points, but I'll pass it off to Rory now.
And I didn't, from yours, would you, as far as proposals you want to put on the table, or any of those, like, would you consider not funding the school pool potentially?
Well, I think if I was putting a proposal forward right now, this is to discuss, and it's not a strong proposal. I like giving something to 350 Deschutes and recognizing we'd have to take it from somewhere else, thinking about some of the places we might take it, but also at the same time thinking about some of these others that are strong. If giving them 1,000, 2,000 is just a waste of money, or if there is some status or relationship building that would signal from sort of a planning perspective almost.
Okay. Rory. It's a good thing we only have 6 people, you guys.
Yes. Yeah, so I'll try not to repeat things that folks have already said, but I want to start by, like, I guess, thanking all of these applicants. It's really cool to see so much interest, and I hope this is a clear signal to our city and its council that great greenhouse gas reduction work can come from partnering with community organizations like this. Because, like, at the end of the day, with this process, we're going to be leaving a lot on the table. It's cool to see. So in thinking about all these applications, I also was eager to want to fund some of these ones that show a very clear impact on greenhouse gas reductions, this being the first round. Not to minimize, like, the importance of education and outreach and workforce development and stuff like that, but I think from kind of like an optic standpoint, it's just something on my mind. Like, we need to show that the city can have impact with spending this relatively small amount of money and partnering with organizations on greenhouse gas reductions. Also wanted to see all the sectors of the CCAP represented, and as of others have noted, was kind of weighted towards some. I do like the Commute Options School Pool project and support funding it, it sort of being the only transportation sector one. It's interesting points that were brought up about how that might be regulated and more information. One thought that comes to my mind in thinking about that question is, it'd still be voluntary for parents, right? And I think there might be different risk tolerances or whatever, but I think families could make their own choice whether they'd want to participate in a carpool and which other families they would want to, do that with. So that mitigates a little bit for me. Ben Bike's comment, I appreciate they came in. It did kind of highlight or make me rethink which projects we are including. And so the only eligible ones, as I looked through, were, supporting electric vehicles and carpool type programs like Commute Options. And that makes me just want to ask, like, in future rounds of funding, how can we support community projects and partnerships that support active transportation? Because I do think that's a really important piece of the local climate puzzle. Yeah, the 3 similar workforce development applications, I'll try not to repeat, but I guess I'd say hopefully we can encourage those 3 organizations to work together. And obviously, if we're funding one of them, like, the brunt would fall on them. But maybe this is, like, unfair to even ask the other orgs that might not get funding, but if they can try to partner, if it's COCC, to advertise the event and, get their names on it or something, it could make that event even stronger by all 3 of them working together. I was questioning, I think Laura made this comment about the Environmental Center revolving loan project and the Habitat project for energy efficiency heat pump upgrades and stuff. Like, what's the greatest benefit? I just don't know, between outright funding heat pump installations or a no interest revolving loan fund. Like, do you reach more people with a revolving loan? Is there sort of stronger equity implications for folks who you know, from their situations, wouldn't feel comfortable committing to a loan that they'd have to repay versus that outright grant that the Habitat project is asking for. So I just feel like I kind of lack the expertise to judge that. And then, so my final thing, I really like the High Desert Food and Farm Alliance Grow and Give program, which would collect surplus food from farmers, farmers markets, community gardens, redistribute it to food banks and pantries and through neighbor impact to, you know, families in need of nutritious food. To me, that's like great direct support for local food production, minimizing food waste and like upstream greenhouse gas emissions of the very consumer, you know, food system or global consumer driven food system we have. So I will throw out a proposal that the Bend Chamber and Environmental Center waste reduction type programs, I would maybe take some of the funding that's going to both of them and throw it toward High Desert Food and Farm Alliance for that program. Or because I think the Bend Chamber and Environmental Center waste reduction programs are somewhat similar, choose one of them and also choose to fund the Grow and Give High Desert Food and Farm Alliance program instead. That was probably more than 5 minutes, sorry.
That's great. I love I just really appreciate how thoughtful all of you are being about it. And I'm glad you thanked the applicants because I was like, just so excited reading all of these. It really, like Megan said, I was not sure how many applications we'd get in this first year, and just reading all of these and being like, wow, we have all of these partners who are able and willing to do all this amazing work was like, just,
It was so heartwarming.
it was just great. And that is what we wanted to do with this program is connect with those organizations and kind of start, you know, just having some community around that. And yeah, I just feel like it's accomplishing that, even just in the reading the applications portion of it. And to some of the comments, Mark, you were making, I think we have some longer term visions of how we can work with these partners and like we'll give them funding, but potentially do some more programming around those partnerships so that we can just make this like a more meaningful program, like recognition ceremony, some sort of like, you know, kind of really establishing those people as like formal climate action partners. We don't know exactly what that looks like yet. We've just been kind of throwing around some ideas. But I do think that especially knowing how many potential partners there are out there, I think there's a lot of potential to kind of like build upon this platform of the grant program with some other cool stuff. Okay. It's 12:30.
Lunch.
So we are gonna still have to talk while we eat probably. Let's take 5 minutes to go get food. Thanks to Megan. We're doing reusables and Covey, the Environmental Center. We're doing reusables for the first time, which is amazing. And it also expands our options for food choices because they don't have to be individually wrapped. So we had Cafe Yum today. But I think we should just weigh how much it's worth, doing that to applicants who might be depending on the timeline.
Right.
I think we can do it.
Okay. So I'm going to pull up, I just have a notes document of the proposals that were put out there. I don't feel like we have time to walk through every single proposal, so I'm curious if you guys feel like, can we just open the discussion, someone can start, and if anyone feels most strongly about one of these proposals, we can sort of discuss that. Do you guys think we can do it that way? Just open discussion, basically. We have 25 minutes. Ideally,
Do we
more
feel like we want
20
to facilitate? Yeah, do we feel like we want to facilitate it, or can we just keep it conversational?
I mean, I think we have kind of a semi-proposal on the table from Lori. We could start there.
Do you know that organization? Do you have any familiarity?
Just a little bit. Yeah. But not super deeply.
And the Grow and Give program, it is an existing program, so that's just one thing that went into our determination, was that this funding, it said, would increase their we also love the program, it would increase their reach by like 10%. So that was part of the reason that it didn't score super high, but
Reuse Bend is an existing program too, right?
the reuse bend is, but the application was for new, because it's funded by a DEQ grant. Their application was these add-on services to that program that won't take place.
And I would just advise as much as you can to make decisions based on the application materials that were submitted, rather than your own personal knowledge or information about the programs. I totally understand why it's easy to rely on that, but as much as you can just work on the face of the documents.
Well, so much of it is on that capacity, and they don't really have room in this kind of online form to tell us what their institutional capacity is. And I think, to be fair, we have some high familiarity with some of them, like the Environment Center, and others. I would hate to unfairly discount their proposal because of my personal narrow perspective, but that was kind of underlying my question there, and I don't
That
know
makes
if
sense.
other circumstances.
That makes sense.
But, also maybe just out there, maybe first of all for you, is it silly to think about sort of signal token prize awards of very small amounts for a few of these ones that are on the margin? Still, we don't have to take the money away. We think that's not actually useful.
I mean, I think there's some overhead to every program. I think that would be money that wouldn't make.
It wouldn't really
impact.
Yeah, it'd mostly be a signal, and whether we think
You
that's.
could do that by saying honorable mention without dollar awards.
That's true.
Or like, are you guys gonna respond to every applicant and let them know like how they score?
Public record.
It's all public
Yeah.
record, so we'll probably. We hadn't thought about that. Like, we'll probably send an email to all of them and say, these are the awarded totals. Yeah. And then with a message, if you would, if you'd like, I think we even maybe already sent one out like that. Like, if you would like to discuss your application, we're happy. They can reach out to us.
Yeah.
So,
I think the better thing would be like, they're encouraged to submit again next round, with the information we provided about what would make it a stronger.
Definitely.
Are we confirmed for another round of this?
Yes, we do have, in the biennial budget, we have 150 this year, 150 next year, and then we'll have to, request that again for the next budget cycle, but for next fiscal year, we have it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there still, after having listened to everyone, so there's the high desert food one, are there others that folks still want to advocate for that didn't get funding?
I was gonna say, I think your explanation on the multifamily recycling, if it sounds like there's sort of a mandate coming down that problem needs to be addressed, so I'm fine withdrawing my thing on that for this.
Someone, did you bring that one up?
Yeah, I
Sarah?
agree with that, because if we can use money that is already in the city to fund that in the nearish future, I think the money could be more impactful for an organization, a nonprofit that doesn't have that money available in the future.
Okay.
So yeah, I recuse.
I sort of agree on that. As I reviewed that one, I asked myself that question, and I didn't know the answer to it, but I thought the recycling modernization program already required some of what they were talking about.
Yes.
Probably not the full amount of outreach and education, right?
Right.
But so yeah, I had that question in my mind too, like how much of that will waste haulers and county governments have to do already.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were there, I know Laura, you'd mentioned a few of the others on the energy side.
I think my strongest one was considering fully funding the zero interest loan program. And that might be sort of a trade-off of like, if we're trying to add another project in, we don't need to do that, but if we're trying to keep the same number of projects and swap one out, then.
And did you or anyone else agreed with that? Because a few people commented how much they liked the loan fund program. Does anyone have thoughts on where they would pull those funds from?
Well, I did comment that because it is described as serving areas outside of Bend as well, that in my mind was justification for partial, but
Can we caveat that? Like the award?
I think that might be hard since it's
I would
staff.
need to, I don't think I can answer that
Yeah.
with confidence right now, because they did write in their application that it's the broader program. We have funded environmental center programs before that are broader and then, but our dollars only go to city event projects. We've done that with our community innovation fund, so. But I have not talked with them if they're interested in that because they did kind of call that out specifically in the application. So anyway, I don't know with enough certainty.
I mean, we've got two on the waste, materials and waste and the waste wise one. Is partial, but. I mean, the delta on the zero loan is about 11,300. If you took 10 out of that waste wise, moved it.
Is the waste wise the chamber, the Bend next one?
How are we, I know there's sort of the count of the awards, but in terms of the dollar values of the awards, because those, well, I guess, okay. It's really only,
How much is like full funding for all?
yeah, I was just sort of trying to quickly look and think about the number of dollars that went to each of the focus areas, how that balances. So we're at 50.
I mean, transportation is the least represented. And I guess, I think transportation was a piece of that program, but it's not necessarily the focus.
Yeah, so like 65 pure energy, 35 transportation and energy, and 50 materials and waste. The lack of the active trans bike ped
Yeah.
is unfortunate.
Yeah, I think that's something we can look into for next round, how we accommodate that. It's tricky because there are certain, I mean, like parts of the transportation system that, you know, the city just has control of, but we could figure out how we can meet in the middle, I think.
I'll say again that I do like the Shoots 350 for a few reasons, but I recognize we have one workforce project and it's already a relatively small total ask. And probably a more efficient use of the dollars. So I wouldn't want to dilute that anymore.
I'm curious about, well, you can go ahead.
I was gonna ask the, experts in the room, if anyone has thoughts or advice on a question that I mentioned of sort of bang for the buck of outright like grants, I guess, from the Habitat for Humanity project for heat pumps versus the revolving loan. Is anyone who's thought about this more than I have or studied it have thoughts?
I think it's a valid question, and ideally, I think you have both, right? You have some programs where for someone who can't take on that, debt, you have the full grant option. But there's always going to be, sort of that next income tier up, and if you're able to then recycle those funds, it can have a longer life and serve more people in the long term. So I think it's fair to recognize that a loan program isn't the right fit for every customer, especially if you're trying to focus on low income customers. But I also feel like having multiple tools funded makes sense.
I think it's kind of an equity versus efficiency issue. And I think if you're just looking at GHG emission reduction per dollar spent. The loan, if it's well implemented with low transaction cost, is more efficient. But there's obviously an equity issue, I think, that you're touching on.
Okay, so I'm kind of hearing that this is maybe a good allocation of what staff has proposed of.
I
those
like
two.
I mean, it does. I guess I'll say for myself, I do feel like the habitat proposal is really strong, but it's also getting the largest total amount by quite a
Right.
quite a bit, 50% at least practically. So it does feel if we're going to reallocate within these. I guess I personally feel like the two waste options are they have their own roles. I actually think the event one is a really nice way that it touches a lot of people and also then has a signal for tourists. I think the waste and garbage and pollution effects of tourism are a real thing to pay attention to. And so I actually appreciated that sort of public signal, public education component of it. But I respect the idea that there certainly is quite a bit of overlap there too, like with these two energy ones.
Yeah, and they're already receiving pretty significantly less than they had asked for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if we want to keep these projects, like, I think it's fine to go forward with partial funding for the environmental center project. It seems like there's enough, conversation around that. I'm not gonna hold us up over that.
Especially if there's another round and it's proven successful, we'll have more data.
I'm curious, we've heard a few things about the school pool proposal. There was more than one person that had reservations about it, and then also some comments in support of it. So I'm curious if everyone could share how they feel about the school pool, because if more people have reservations about it, it's one that could be reallocated towards some of those other ones.
Yeah, Roy, I was gonna ask you why do you like it?
The first reason is just hitting all the sectors of the CCAP. Like this is sort of the only transportation focused one we have. Also, said this in this committee before, but back when the city developed its current transportation system plan, TSP, and they did a BMT reduction analysis, like how do we do so much single occupant trips and cumulative VMT. It was these types of programs, like working with large institutions on carpooling and like schedule stuff. Like that was the greatest impact in reducing VMT. So I had that in my mind too, as I thought about this proposal, as I read through it. Like it's documented, like the analysis has been done. This is one of the key tools to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation sector.
Was there anything specific to schools? Do you remember?
So anecdotally, I feel like we all see how much traffic the schools drive at certain times a day. I'm sure there's probably data to back that up. But it seems in my mind, and recognizing this is very qualitative, that it has potential to have good impact on reducing those trips.
Yeah, just as again, I know this is anecdotal, but I have tried to do a lot of carpooling as a parent and do a fair amount on school activities. The before school carpooling is really difficult because getting kids ready and all that extra time is complicated. And we've actually had carpools where we had parents eventually pull out of it. And sort of the after school element, back to if there's a bus option already, it does feel like this is a pretty limited piece. I totally see it as a valuable thing. It just in my head on the margin, as someone who's tried to come up with commuting options with my kids a lot, I don't know if this would help me that much because there are a lot of opportunities to get in touch with other parents, like the Facebook groups for parents and PTO and things like that. And then from your class, from your neighborhood, from your sport teams, all the places where you would naturally most efficiently find someone to commute with. There's already a lot of opportunity for that kind of communication, but I certainly don't know all circumstances. So. we're already, that's only getting a partial funding though, so.
Cassie, is there sort of reporting back to the city on after the year has passed and the money's been spent on how successful the program or project was?
Your mind with the.
Yeah, so we're considering doing like quarterly reports and then for sure an annual report. In the application, there's a section for them to identify like 3 metrics to compare against or to measure at the end of the year. So that's what we'd use as like a metric.
Yeah.
Probably at minimum want an update like a month or 2 before the next round, because probably people will come back in, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Be fine.
and it'll be reimbursed. It's a reimbursement grant, so we'll be getting, you know, we'll know the status of the project from the reimbursement alone.
Maybe just given the amount of time, I don't know if this would be too difficult, if we even the 6 of us, if we have proposed reallocations of the funds, and then we thought about an average across the 6 of us, something like that. I don't know if there are enough reallocations, maybe just quickly if each person sort of has a vote, how you would reallocate. Maybe first of all, the question, if there's anyone that's not on this set right now that we would really want to see moved. Maybe that's part of it, even given the time. Is there anyone that's actually just feels fine with the allocation as it is now?
I could go that way. I think everybody's been making valid comments. It's the first time too. So maybe we're just doing this and getting some questions answered.
Do you think, I'm trying to think about something with given 5 minutes, and I respect getting them a response sooner than later. Do you guys like that idea of sort of a weighted vote, or do we not? Or do we have another?
It might take us 5 minutes to figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
I think it would
I
be
think we just need like 2 options, be like, do it as is or drop school pool and reallocate to the rest of the projects in there. Or
Okay,
or
that's
if there's
good.
one more option to add in.
Yeah,
you know,
the ones
that-
I've heard most consistently would be potentially dropping school pool and then reallocating that maybe towards the loan fund. There's other potentials out there, but those are the 2 that I feel like I've heard the most consistent on.
Or the food one, the high desert food. I would
Or the
probably,
food.
I'd probably vote for reallocating the school to the food. And those are both things you advocated for, if you. A little bit of.
Be a hard choice for me.
Yeah.
Can I just throw
Yeah,
out
yeah,
since
please
it's a
go.
free-flowing conversation? Yeah, sort of, I continue to like the Grow and Give program from HDFFA. What about pulling maybe a portion of funding from the Habitat project because it's funded in full and it's the largest amount? So 5 or 10 from there, and maybe thinking of the other waste and materials projects. Maybe 5 from the Ben Chamber Wastewise events to give a solid 10 or 15 to the HDFFA program. There's a pitch.
They were good with partial funding, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, they were all good.
Because it's just a program they're scaling up that already exists. I think I like that suggestion.
So it's 5K each from Habitat Reuse, Bend and Wastewise, and allocating 15K,
Maybe 10.
How much?
10K.
Did you say 5 from each?
Yeah.
Yeah, I left
Three
it
of-
vague just to get a temperature from the room, but
Oh, like 10K from the bigger one, you mean?
yeah.
Is that what you were suggesting?
Oh, no, I was thinking 5K from each of those 2 to get
Oh,
10K.
well, I think you said all 3, right? All 3.
No, I just said 2.
What
Yeah.
was the which of the waste ones was it? The waste ones or reuse bin?
And next.
The Ben next.
Oh, okay.
Wastewise.
This is why I was thinking a vote, especially if like rounded to 5, would maybe be kind of quick, especially if it's in terms of changes, but. 'Cause I would, if maybe 5 of it came out of the school one. I know we're doing a little horse trading here now, but.
That's what this was gonna be,
Yeah.
no matter what.
Does everyone agree conceptually with pulling money from something else to give to Grow and Give? Could we just see like nods on that?
Yeah.
And then is that the only one we want to try to put more money towards? Are there any other ones? Like, the other one that I've heard is potentially doing more on the loan fund. Are we okay with leaving the loan fund as is?
We could take money from the school pool if people have less, I guess, belief in that program and allocate it towards the loan. I would be interested in that.
Are others interested in that?
So if there's one I would increase, it would be that revolving loan.
Okay.
Less, I'm not, it's not totally clear to me if school pool only had 10K, if they'd be, could they still run?
Yeah, I'm not
Scale.
sure.
That's what I worry about.
Yeah, going below half. Are the any of them where we're going below 50 of the requests? No.
In terms of like proportional impact, you know, the habitat one is still would be 45K. That still is like the most to pull from.
Yeah, and they even had said they were okay with partial.
I think so.
Let's see the other ones, if we took from them, like the two waste ones. They would both be all the way down to 50, and the second one would be low 50%.
Or just another option, if, since we already have two waste ones, we're adding one, if we wanted to pull from those to add the third waste option and then pull from the habitat to put a bit more in the fund.
Yeah, that's,
Oh,
that
yeah.
keeps things.
That's
balanced.
logical. Yeah. So it would be 5K each from reuse bend and waste wise towards grow and give.
Yep.
Mhm.
And then even just 5K from habitat to the loan fund, like that at least gets them closer to fully funded. Or you do 8 to 10.
That makes sense. I'd support that.
Do we need a motion?
Yes.
And then would we still fund the school pool?
I guess we're
Yeah.
funding that one.
Is that?
It is already
It's
reduced.
already at
Yeah.
partial.
Yeah, we'd almost have to go 0 to go much lower.
I think we should have a
Like,
transportation.
question, yeah, is
Okay,
we
we're
wanna keep that one,
Which one?
school pool.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. I
I'm
think
gonna try to help
it sounds like
procedurally.
Yeah.
I think we're all good with Laura's proposal. Does that sound like
I
it?
can make a motion.
We're updating those amounts in this matrix and then we'll
That
pull the
was, if
matrix.
there's a way, I don't think you need to do a motion to change the staff recommendation. I think if we can just get the final numbers up on the screen.
Yeah, that's
And then you all can just do one motion and it'll be
And
a
it will-
motion to
and you can-
recommend the city manager approve
Yeah.
And you
funding
can
and the amounts
refer
as
to
presented.
what's
Yep.
on the screen,
Yep.
yeah. No,
sorry
about one. Oh, that's okay.
See that either?
Yeah.
No, it is like a mechanism behind voting thing.
You know.
You know, it's
Well, it's like my.
a lot of.
That
All about.
was such a smart reference.
Or, you know, most people would say. In that context. But any.
Yeah, I'm
That
that report.
this is a really interesting exercise.
Yeah.
And
That
is
Yeah.
Right.
well, or at least how
Yeah.
how imperialistic it is.
That too.
Okay, I think I can you guys.
Yeah, yeah, touches so many areas, not just.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Can you share your screen? Are you gonna say? Oh, because I have my local copy up and you're like doing that on your local copy. You know what I mean? Okay, Megan's gonna pull up. Okay, so we have that reflected here and the changes are that, Habitat for Humanity would be funded at 45,000, the, COCC application would be funded. That's partial, would be funded fully at 14,240. The Environmental Center's loan program would be partially funded at 25,760, so that's a 5K increase. The Bend Next Foundation will be partially funded to 25,000. Reuse Bend would be funded at 15,000, and then school pool will be funded at 15,000, and then HDFFA's Grow and Give would be funded at 10,000.
What was the total ask from Grow and Give?
Yeah, we just can't, we don't have it on the top of our head right now.
Yeah.
I think it's 30-ish.
37. So it is quite a bit. It's less than a third of what they asked for, but we said it's a scale.
Existing.
Right.
Yeah.
What am I moving to?
You are moving to recommend funding awards to the city manager
I'm,
in the amounts presented.
okay, I'm moving to recommend funding amounts in the amounts presented to the city manager.
Great.
We have a second.
Second.
Okay. Nick is the second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Think we have that?
Yeah, okay, great. Thanks, everyone. That was a really good one.
Meeting adjourned?
We can adjourn the meeting, yeah, everything
there
else
another
we can
agenda
just, we can figure everything else out next time. So, yeah,
Okay.
thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, staff.